Hello everyone. Today let us talk about chapter number 8, that is part 1 of your chemistry textbook. In that we are going to discuss some important topics from chapter of D and F block elements. In the previous video we have discussed what is meant by D block element. So here, just to revise it, D block elements means in them the last electron is present in D orbital. This D orbital can be 3D, it can be 4D, it can be 5D, it can be 6D. Clear? But in the periodic table from fourth period onwards, there is a presence of D orbital. Clear? And so all those elements which have their last electron present in D orbital belong to D block. But these D block elements are also known as transition elements, and we have already discussed the definition of transition elements. These are the elements, they are D block elements, but in them D orbital is incompletely filled either in the ground state of the atom or in one of the most common oxidation state of the ion. Clear? I repeat, transition elements means those D block elements in which the D orbitals are incompletely filled in the ground state of an atom or in the most common oxidation state of that atom. Clear? So here, keeping in mind the first transition series, that is 3D series, in which the elements from scandium to zinc are included. So that series we will keep in mind, and with the help of it we are going to discuss certain important properties of D block elements. So today we will focus on the magnetic property. Now in the first chapter of solid state we have studied 5 different types of magnetic properties: diamagnetic, paramagnetic, ferromagnetic, antiferromagnetic and ferrimagnetic. Clear? We have also seen that paramagnetism results due to the presence of one or more unpaired electron in the atom, ion or molecule. Clear? Also, ferromagnetism, in that also unpaired electron is present, but the difference between paramagnetism and ferromagnetism is, in paramagnetism substance is weakly attracted by the magnetic field, whereas in ferromagnetism substance is strongly attracted by magnetic field. So we can say that ferromagnetism is the extreme form of paramagnetism. Clear? But in this topic, magnetic property, we are discussing for 3D block elements. Clear? So for them there is presence of, as per the definition of transition elements, they have incompletely filled D orbital, means there is presence of unpaired electron, one or more unpaired electron in 3D orbital, and that is why these elements, they are paramagnetic. Clear? Now paramagnetic, if the substance is paramagnetic, then it has unpaired electron, and this unpaired electron will have 2 types of motions. One is the electron revolves around the nucleus, that is, it's a orbital motion. Clear? And another is electron, it revolves about or it spins about its own axis. So that is called spin motion of electron. So electron is a negatively charged particle and it has 2 different types of motions. One is orbital motion, the other is a spin motion. Whenever any charged particle is in motion, then it will produce magnetic field. So here also electron present, unpaired electron present in transition element will have its own magnetic field. Now the strength of this magnetic field is given by magnetic moment. Clear? So here we are talking about 3D block elements. So in 3D block elements means from elements scandium to zinc. Clear? Zinc itself is not considered as a transition element. Clear? So from from scandium to copper, all these elements, in these elements the orbital angular momentum is quenched, it is suppressed by spin angular momentum. and that is why orbital angular momentum has no significance for 3D block elements. So as I told you before that in this chapter we will focus only on 3D block elements. So for 3D block elements we will consider only spin only formula in order to calculate the magnetic moment. Clear? So magnetic moment, its symbol is mu. So mu is equal to under root n into n plus 2 Bohr magneton. Bohr magneton is the unit used to express magnetic moment. Now what is n here? So n is the number of unpaired electron present in that atom or ion. Clear? So once again, in case of 3D block elements, though unpaired electrons are present, they have their orbital angular momentum as well as spin angular momentum, but for them orbital angular momentum holds no significance because it is suppressed by spin angular momentum, and that is why the formula used to calculate magnetic moment is the spin only formula, in which we consider only the number of electron and their spin. Clear? So mu is equal to under root n into n plus 2, where n is the number of unpaired electrons. Clear? Okay. Now for this, you are given one table in your textbook. You don't have to remember this table, but in MCQs you can be asked, for example, what is the magnetic moment of Ti3 plus ion. So for that you must know atomic number of from scandium to zinc. Is it clear? So once you know the atomic number and once you know the electron configuration, then you can immediately write down the electron configuration of the given ion. So for Ti3 plus, here you can see the configuration is a 3D1. Means in 3D orbital there is one electron present which is unpaired. So this, in this formula, n is equal to 1. So if we substitute that value, then we will get 1.73 Bohr magneton as a calculated magnetic moment, means the theoretical magnetic moment of Ti3 plus ion. Clear? This one is experimentally or observed magnetic moment of Ti3 plus ion. So there is slight difference in the theoretical and observed value. Clear? First ion Sc3 plus, scandium 3 plus, it has no electron in 3D orbital. Clear? So no electron means in this formula n is equal to 0. So its magnetic moment is 0. Got it? So those ions of 3D block elements which have 0 electron in 3D orbital, means no electron in 3D orbital, or we can say that 3D orbitals are completely vacant. So for such ions, the calculated and observed magnetic moment will be 0. Okay, now one by one you can see Ti2 plus ion. Its configuration is 3D2. So there are two unpaired electrons, and so the magnetic moment is 2.84. Observed one is 2.76. V2 plus, vanadium 2 plus ion, the configuration is 3D3, but it means that 3 unpaired electrons are present in 3D orbital. So substituting n is equal to 3 in this formula, we get 3.87. So this is the calculated value and this is observed value. Then Cr2 plus, it is 3D4, means 4 unpaired electrons. So n is equal to 4, so 4.90 and 4.80. Then Mn2 plus, this ion has the maximum number of unpaired electrons. So its configuration is a 3D5. So all 5 electrons, d orbitals are 5 in number, 1 electron in each. So all the 5 electrons present in 3D orbital are unpaired. So n is equal to 5. So its a calculated magnetic moment is 5.92 and the observed one is 5.96. Similarly, Fe3 plus ion. Clear? If we talk about Fe3 plus ion, ferric ion, then it also has a 3D5 configuration. So it will also have the same magnetic moment value. Clear? Then comes Fe2 plus. Its configuration is a 3D6. 3D6 means out of 5 3D orbitals, in one 3D orbital there is electron pair, and in remaining 4 3d orbitals there are unpaired electrons. Means in Fe2 plus ion there are 4 unpaired electrons. Clear? 5th and 6th are present as electron pair. So here the number of unpaired electron is 4. So in this formula n is equal to 4. Now you can see if n is equal to 4, then magnetic moment, calculated magnetic moment is 4.90. Similarly here also it will be 4.90. Clear? But the observed one, you can see it is in the range. It is not having the fixed value. It is in the range of 5.3 to 5.5. Then comes CO2 plus ion, cobalt, CO2 plus ion. So its configuration is 3d7. 3d7 means 2d orbitals have electron pairs. Clear? And remaining 3d orbitals, they have unpaired electron. So in cobalt 2 plus, number of unpaired electron is 3. So if n is equal to 3, then here you can see 3.87 is the calculated magnetic moment. So the same value we will get here also. Clear? And the observed value is in the range of 4.4 to 5.2. Clear? Then comes Zn2 plus. Now Zn2 plus is not transition element, but it is a 3D block element. So Zn2 plus has a 3D10. Means all electrons are paired. There is 0 unpaired electron, and that is why its magnetic moment, whether it is calculated, theoretical, or it is observed, means the experimental, both are 0. Clear? So in short, see, you don't have to remember these values, but the trick is depending upon the number of unpaired electrons present in a d orbital, the value for the magnetic moment is just like that only. Means 3d1, 1 unpaired electron means 1.73, 2 unpaired electron means 2.84, 3 unpaired electron means 3.87. Clear? So if you, for example, if you don't remember the exact digits after decimal, then also it's okay. You should know that 3 electrons, 3 unpaired electrons means it is 3 point something. Clear? So in exam you are going to calculate. So when you use this formula, there is no question of remembering the whole value. Clear? You yourself will calculate the value. So you will get this answer only. Got it? Okay. One more thing from this table is you can realize is if d orbital is vacant, then magnetic moment is 0. If d orbital is complete, then also magnetic moment is 0. Clear? So these are the tricks. 0 electron, 0 unpaired electron means 0 magnetic moment. All d orbitals completely filled by 10 electrons, then also 0 magnetic moment, because the number of unpaired electron is 0. Got it? Okay. And remaining you can calculate if you know the atomic number. So for this particular question, MCQs type of question, the important thing is you should know the atomic number and the electron configuration of all the elements of 3D transition series. 4D, 5D, if you don't remember, it's okay. But for 3D orbital, 3D block elements, you must remember the elements, their atomic number and their electron configuration. Okay. Now if you have noticed, if you compare these two values, then you can see that, you can realize that there is a slight difference in these values. Clear? Though the number of electrons are same, but here for example for titanium 3 plus, the calculated value is 1.73, but the observed value is 1.75. So it is slightly higher than the calculated value. But if you see this Ti2 plus, the calculated value is 2.84, but the observed value is 2.76. It is slightly lower than the calculated value. So why it is so? So as I told you that electron has orbital angular momentum and spin angular momentum. So both the angular momentum, both the types of magnetic field which are produced due to two different types of motions are working together, which is known as spin orbital coupling. Clear? So it is a spin orbital coupling. So in the observed value, in the experimental value of magnetic moment, this spin orbital coupling is considered. Means both the magnetic moments are considered, and that is why the value is not exactly same as the theoretical value, because in theoretical value we are considering only the spin momentum, clear, spin momentum, and we consider only the number of unpaired electrons. But when the same value is obtained experimentally, then the device that we use, that device is unaware of whether it has to take into consideration orbital angular momentum or spin angular momentum, and that is why it consider both, and so that is known as a spin orbital coupling. So this is again important point which is not mentioned in the textbook, but it is important point that why the theoretical and experimental magnetic moment values of transition elements are slightly higher or lower than each other. So why it is so? So it is because of spin orbital coupling. Got it? So this is very important topic from MCQ's point of view, and as well as in 2 marks question also you can be asked such type of short notes. Clear? So if it is asked in short note, then no need to remember all these values. You can remember randomly 2 or 3 ions. Clear? And then calculate their values, and approximately observed value you can just put slightly higher or lower than. No one is going to check the exact values. Clear? So this topic is important for D blocks. Then the next is formation of colored ions. Transition elements, most of the transition elements of the first series, if we are talking about, then they have colored ions. For example, Cu2 plus is a blue colored ion, copper sulfate, copper nitrate, these are blue colored compounds. Clear? The compound of nickel, in which nickel is in +2 oxidation state, they are green in color. Fe2 plus, ferrous ion, so FeSO4 is a light green in color. FeCl3 means ferric chloride, in which Fe is in +3 oxidation state, so that is reddish brown in color. Clear? If we see the two different compounds of chromium, chromium means potassium chromate and potassium dichromate, then one is yellow in color, the other is orange in color. Clear? So why there is so different colors are obtained in case of transition elements? Otherwise, if we have studied S block elements, we have studied P block elements, but in those elements rarely the colors are found. But transition elements are those elements of the periodic table, they have, most of them have colored ions. So what is the reason for that? So again our discussion will be based on the number of unpaired electrons. Clear? As these are transition elements, they have presence of one or more unpaired electrons in their d orbitals, and that is why when these elements get exposure to the visible light, then by absorbing this light energy, electron present in d orbital is excited to the higher d orbital. Clear? And when it return back to the lower d orbital, then it will emit the energy absorbed in the form of light. Clear? In the form of colored light. So this is known as a d-d transition. From lower d orbital to higher d orbital, electron jumps by absorption of light energy, or vice versa. Clear? So from lower to higher or from higher to lower. But this transition, this jump of electron takes place within the d orbital only, and that is why it is known as a d-d transition. So d-d transition is the important phenomenon for the color of ions. Clear? So in this also now if we stick to this word d-d transition, then we can say that all those transition elements in which d-d transition is not possible, they are colorless, and those which have d-d transition possible will give us colored ions. For example, scandium 3 plus. Now in scandium 3 plus there is no electron in a d orbital, so it is 3d0, and that is why it will be colorless. Here, if we take Ti plus 4 ion, titanium plus 4 ion, then again it has a 0 electron in the d orbital, so it is colorless. But Ti3 plus, the same element in a different oxidation state, titanium 3 plus, it is 3d1, So one electron present in a d orbital. So remaining 4 d orbitals are vacant. So this electron from 3d orbital, one 3d orbital, it can jump to the higher 3d orbital here, and that is why it gives a purple color. Chromium 3 plus, it is 3d3, again unpaired electrons are there, and so it will give us violet color. Then Fe3 plus, it is 3d5, so 5 unpaired electron, so it gives yellow color. Clear? Fe2 plus 3d6, so 3d6 means it has 4 unpaired electrons, so it gives green color. Got it? But here you can see Cu plus 1 and Cu plus 2. Cu plus 1, it is 3d10, means d orbital is complete, so there is no scope for dd transition, so it is colorless. But if we see Cu2 plus ion, then it has 3d9 configuration. So there is a one unpaired electron present in 3d orbital, and that is why it is blue in color. But again you see Zn2 plus, it is 3d10, complete d orbital, so no scope for dd transition, so it is colorless. Clear? So here the thing important is, here the entire table you have to remember with their color, because in exam you can be asked in MCQs that which one is the color of so and so ion. So you will be given 4 different colors. Clear? Or you can be given which ion, which of the following ion will show suppose green color or blue color. So in 4 options you will be given 4 different ions. So that type of question can be asked from this topic. So you have to remember the whole table. Clear? In short, dd transition, wherever it is possible, that color that ion will show color, otherwise it will not show any color. One more important thing is, as we know, visible light is made up of 7 different colors. So the ion absorbs some amount of some colors from that visible light. So the color which is absorbed by the ion will not be the color shown by that ion. Clear? So the color which is not absorbed by the ion will be shown by that ion. For example, Cu2 plus is blue in color. It doesn't mean that Cu2 plus absorbs blue color. It is opposite to that. It absorbs all remaining colors from visible light except blue color, and that is why it shows blue color. Clear? So the color shown by, color exhibited by the transition metal ion is the complementary color. It is the color which is not absorbed by the ion. Clear? Remaining colors are absorbed by the ion. The color which is not absorbed by that ion will be the color of the ion. Clear? So this thing you have to remember very well. So this is all about formation of colored ions. So the formation of complex compounds. Now there is one separate chapter on complex compounds or coordination compounds. So in that chapter we will discuss in much detail, but here only for your information, what are complex compounds or what are complex ions. So in complex ions, the transition metal is present in the center, and the negative ions or the electron efficient molecules, means those molecules which have one or more non-bonding electron pairs. Clear? So these negative ions and or neutral molecules, they are present surrounding the transition metal ion. So transition metal ion is present in the center, like the nucleus. So nucleus, we know that the nucleus of the atom is very, very small. Clear? Because it is present in the center. So here also in complex compounds, transition metal ion is present in the center. So this is the example. FeCN6 3 minus, then CONH3 4 times 2 plus. Here cyanide ion is a negative ion. There are 6 cyanide ions surrounding one Fe3 plus ion. Here there are 4 neutral ammonia molecules surrounding one cobalt ion, CO2 plus ion. Clear? So all such variety of complexes we will study in the next chapter. But here what is responsible for the complex compounds? Why from all the elements of periodic table only transition elements can form complex compounds? What is the reason for that? So 3 important reasons are: one is a small size. Transition metal ion, they are metallic ion, means they are positive ions. they are small in size. As I told you that iron, small metallic ion is present in the center of the complex, like the nucleus. Clear? So if the ion has to be present in the center, then it has to be smaller in size. Clear? So transition metal ions are smaller in size, so they can easily adjust into the small central vacancy. Then they have high ionic charge. Clear? They have high ionic charge. So what makes a difference when they have high ionic charge? If ionic charge is more, means if the valency, if the oxidation state of the metal ion is more, it can combine with more number of negative ions or more number of neutral molecules. Here I would like to tell you the simple example. This is not the transition element, but just to make you understand. Na plus, its the oxidation state is +1, so it can combine with one chloride ion. But Mg2 plus, magnesium, it is having +2 oxidation state, so it can combine with 2 chloride ions. So if there is increase in the ionic charge, that ion can attach or it can combine with more number of ions. Clear? So here this transition metal ions, they have higher ionic charge. Either they have +1, +2, +3, +4, +5, up to +7 they can go. Clear? So they have higher ionic charge, and that is why they can combine with more number of negative ions or neutral molecules. Clear? And third is availability of d orbitals. They have, see, transition elements, they have incomplete d orbitals present in their electron configuration, and that is why whenever it has to form complex compound, then the electron that transition metal ion will receive from the negative ions or neutral molecules, so to accommodate those electrons which are coming from the negative ion or neutral molecule, transition metal ion must have d orbital available. Clear? So due to availability of d orbital also, they can form complex compounds. Clear? So we will not go in much detail. Only these three factors which are important characteristics of transition metal ion, that you have to remember, and it is responsible for formation of complex compounds. Next is catalytic property. Many transition metal ions or their compounds are used as a catalyst. For example, in a contact process, in p block elements we have studied contact process. In that, vanadium pentoxide V2O5 is used as a catalyst. Vanadium is a transition element. Clear? Then in Haber's process, in industrial production of ammonia from nitrogen and hydrogen, iron powder is used as a catalyst. Clear? Then in hydrogenation reaction, catalytic hydrogenation, for example alkene or alkyne, when they are to be hydrogenated, clear, when they are to be reacted with hydrogen, then that is you must be remembering that it is, we always write H2/Ni. So here Ni, nickel, is a transition element. Clear? So here this transition elements, they are generally used as a catalyst either in the elemental form or in the compound form. So why they are used as a catalyst? So for that also there are certain points. One is ability to adopt multiple oxidation states. Transition elements, they don't have fixed oxidation state. For example, S block, the first group element, alkali metals, they have +1 oxidation state only. They cannot exhibit other than +1. Then alkaline earth metals, second group elements, they have only +2 oxidation state. Clear? So but transition elements, they have variety of oxidation state. So they have ability to adopt multiple oxidation states. Clear? Second is ability to change oxidation state. So suppose we start the reaction with one particular oxidation state of transition metal ion, but during the reaction it can also change its oxidation state as per the requirement. So due to these two characteristics, transition elements are widely used as a catalyst. Clear? Okay. Now here, what is the mechanism for their catalytic activity? So here transition metals, transition elements, they are all solids. Clear? When the reaction is carried out in the presence of catalyst, then in the chapter of chemical kinetics we have studied that activation energy decreases. Clear? So the in order to start the reaction fruitfully, or in order to complete the reaction fruitfully, the reactant molecules must have some minimum amount of kinetic energy, which is called activation energy. But in presence of catalyst, this activation energy decreases. That is why at lower with lower kinetic energy also the reactant molecule can react successfully with each other. Clear? So the first thing is in the catalytic activity, the catalyst must decrease the activation energy, and yes, this transition elements decreases the activation energy. Another thing is, when these elements are used as a catalyst, they are in the solid form. So on the surface of these elements, there is adsorption of the reactant molecules. These also we have studied in the chapter of surface chemistry. Clear? So when during catalytic activity, the reactant molecules get adsorbed on the surface of the catalyst. Why there is adsorption? Because the reactant molecules, they are attracted towards the catalyst surface. Clear? And they form certain bond, temporary bond with the transition element, with the catalyst. Clear? Actually this catalyst, they have rough surface like this. So they have got, suppose this is the catalyst surface. So this surface is not smooth. It is a protruded heel-like structure. It is a rough surface. So there are minute protruded heels-like structures on the surface of the catalyst. Clear? So the electron present on the surface, they are very reactive and they will act as a magnet. So they will attract the reactant molecules towards itself. Clear? So reactant molecule will form bond with this catalyst. So in that, the catalyst will utilize its 4s and 3d electrons for bond formation. Clear? And we have studied in the adsorption theory of catalysis that after the bond is formed between the reactant and the catalyst, and then when the required product is obtained, then there is a diffusion of the reactant or the product from the surface of the catalyst also. Clear? So this is the mechanism. So here in the catalytic activity of the transition elements, the first thing is they don't have smooth surface. So because of rough surface, they have protruded heels like structures, and on these heels, the electron which are present, they are very reactive. So they can easily attract the reactant molecules. Clear? When reactant molecules are attracted, then reactant will form bond with the catalyst, means it will form bond with the transition metal. So in this bond formation, transition metal will utilize its 3d or 4s electrons. Clear? And that is how the bond is formed. So the concentration of the reactant on the surface of the catalyst will go on increasing as the reaction proceeds. Got it? And during this mechanism of the catalysis, the transition metal, it can also change its oxidation state. So this is the main important factor which is responsible for the catalytic activity of transition elements. And in doing so, transition element will decrease the activation energy. So the reaction will take place fast. So here, in order to understand the second point, that is ability to change oxidation state, we will take one example. Suppose the reaction between iodide ion and persulfate ions is carried out. Clear? In presence of Fe3 plus ion. Ferric ion is used as a catalyst. So see, the reaction is, it seems very simple in the first step, that it is two iodide ions will react with persulfate ion to give iodine and sulfate ion. This is the reaction. But actually it takes place in two steps. In the first step, the catalyst, that is Fe3 plus ion, will combine with iodide ion and it will change its oxidation state from +3 to +2. Means it will reduce. Clear? And it will oxidize iodide ion into iodine. Clear? So this iodine which is there in the main reaction, it is actually obtained in the first step itself. Clear? Now this Fe2 plus, it will now bring about the reduction of this persulfate ion. So in the second step, this Fe2 plus is oxidized to Fe3 plus, but it will reduce this persulfate ion into sulfate ion. Clear? So in the main reaction, sulfate ion, which is written on the product side, it is obtained in the second step of the reaction. In short, Fe3 plus ion, which is used as a catalyst, it can change its oxidation state as per the requirement, and finally in the final step it is obtained back. Clear? So they have, these transition elements, they have this ability to change their oxidation state, and which is very means important factor which is required for their catalytic activity. Clear? So this is again very important topic. Now the next topic is formation of interstitial compounds. This is again very important. It is asked in 2 marks question. So these two topics, they are generally asked in 2 marks question. Clear? And this can be, as this topic is not discussed in much detail, you can be asked in MCQs. Which of the following is not the factor responsible for formation of complex compounds? Then 3 factors will be these only, and the 4th will be something different. Clear? So that type of question can be asked. Now interstitial compounds. So first we need to understand what is meant by interstitial. Now transition elements, they are metals. Clear? So in metals there is a closed packed arrangement of the atoms. But during this close packed arrangement, you can see this type of interstitial spaces are left vacant. These are called voids. These are called vacancies. They are interstitial voids or interstitial vacancies or interstitial holes. Now these are very small in size. Clear? So a very small non-metallic element like hydrogen, carbon, boron or nitrogen, these are non-metallic elements. They are very small in size, so they can easily enter into this interstitial space without forming any strong chemical bond. So here I have written that there is no ionic or covalent bond formation when the non-metallic element enters into the interstitial space of transition metals. Clear? So without forming any strong bond, it just enters into it. Clear? For example, when in the golf, the hole which is created for the ball, clear? So that hole is bigger in size, but the golf ball is smaller in size, so it can easily go into that hole, clear, without forming any bond. So whenever required, you can take it out also. So similarly here also, the interstitial space, this non-metallic element go easily into it, and whenever required they can come out also. Clear? So they don't form any strong ionic or covalent bond, they just enter into it. Clear? This type of compounds are called non-stoichiometric compound, means their proportion is not fixed. In one interstitial hole there can be 1 or 2 or 3 atoms present, or sometimes between 3 or 4 transition metal atoms. Clear? So only one non-metallic atom can also be there. So their proportion is not fixed, so their formulas are not fixed. Here you can see, you can focus on this formula. It is written in a fraction. Generally we don't write any formula in fraction. Clear? When the compound is to be formed, we have to follow the laws of chemical combination, and in which the elements combine with each other, they react with each other in the fixed small whole number ratio, but here it is in fraction. Clear? So these formulas are not true. Clear? This is just to make us understand that what is meant by non-stoichiometric compounds. So interstitial compounds are also known as a non-stoichiometric compounds, and they are the compounds formed when non-metallic elements like hydrogen, carbon, boron or nitrogen enters into the interstitial space of transition elements. If hydrogen enters, then the compound is called hydride. If carbon enters, it is called carbide. If boron enters, it is called boride. If nitrogen enters, it is called nitride. Clear? Now how these interstitial compounds are important. So here they have higher melting point than the pure metal. Pure metal is having some melting point, but compared to that melting point, this interstitial compounds, they have higher melting point. Why it is so? Because in transition elements, the d orbitals have unpaired electrons. Clear? Now this unpaired, and these are all metals, transition elements are all metals, and they have metallic bond. Clear? So in metallic bond we have studied that the valence electron is a delocalized. Clear? It is free to move in the entire crystal, but when the non-metallic element enters into the interstitial space, then these electrons, they get stabilized. Clear? And when they get stabilized, then there is increase in the hardness, there is increase in the melting point. So compared to pure metal, these interstitial compounds have higher melting point. Clear? They are very hard. In this example is given borides. Some borides, not all, some borides are as hard as a diamond. Clear? So if we want to increase hardness of the transition element, then interstitial compounds are formed. Then third is they retain their metallic conductivity. Means when the interstitial compound is formed, they will not lose their original property. Instead, there is modification in some existing property. There will be addition of some new properties, but the original old properties will be retained. So their metallic conductivity will be retained, and they become chemically inert. Why chemically inert? Because I told you that the valence electron will get stabilized. Clear? So this topic is very, very important. Then the last topic, alloy formation. Alloys, they are in the chapter of solutions we have studied, alloys are the solid solutions in which solute and solvent both are solids. Clear? So when different metals, when different solids, they are mixed up in some proper proportion, then the solution which is obtained is called alloy. So alloys are also, see here in interstitial compound, some new properties are added, some old properties are retained, some old properties are modified. Similarly, when alloy formation takes place, then we mix up all the desired properties of different elements into one compound. Clear? Suppose one metal is having higher melting point, the other is resistant to corrosion, the third is having good conductivity. Clear? So if we want to mix all this, if we want to have all these properties in one particular compound, then we go for alloy formation. Clear? So alloy will have all the desired properties of different elements present in that. Clear? And that is why it is very important, it is essential. Okay. Now all the metals, we cannot use them for alloy formation. There are certain rules. Clear? Only those transition elements which have 50% or less difference in their atomic radii, they can be mixed up very easily. Clear? So we are talking about the first transition series, 3D block elements. Clear? So in this transition series, all those elements which have 15% or less difference in their atomic radii or metallic radii, they can be mixed up very easily. Clear? Another factor which is not given in the textbook, but they must have identical electron configuration. Here identical means they will not have the same electron configuration. Same electron configuration, then the element will also become the same. It is not in that context. Here they must have identical electron configuration, means there must be very slight difference in their electron configuration. Clear? For example, if in one element there are 5 electrons present in the d orbital, the other element is having 4 electrons in the d orbital, third element is having 6 electrons in the d orbital, then these 3 elements, they have very close electron configuration, so they can be mixed up very well. Third is their crystalline structure. If one element is having, suppose, body center crystalline structure and the other is having face center crystalline structure, then they cannot be mixed up. So they must have same crystalline structure also. Clear? So transition elements, they satisfy all these requirements for alloy formation, and that is why most of the alloys that we know, they are made from transition elements. So many ferrous alloys are known. Ferrous alloys means in which iron is the main component. For example, many steels and stainless steels. Along with iron, either chromium, vanadium, tungsten, molybdenum, then manganese, all these elements can be mixed up in proper proportion. It is not just that we take one element and other element and we mix up. It is not like that. In proper proportion, they should be mixed up. But there are certain alloys in which one transition element and the other non-transition elements are also present. For example, brass. Brass is an alloy of copper and zinc. Here both are transition elements. But zinc, we know that it is a D block element but not transition element. Clear? So brass is the alloy in which copper is a transition element but zinc is not transition element, though both of them are D block elements. Then bronze, it is copper and tin. So here copper is a transition element, tin is not transition element. Clear? So these two example can be asked in MCQs. Got it? So this is again important topic. Clear? But here the important thing which you have to remember is that metallic radii should not have difference more than 15%. Clear? These two factors are not given, they are not mentioned in the textbook. So if you don't remember, it will do. But this is just for your knowledge. I told you that these are also responsible factors for alloy formation. Clear? So today we discuss 4 different properties of transition element: formation of complex compound, catalytic property, then interstitial compounds, and alloy formation. Clear? But in this and the other 2 properties we had already discussed in the previous lecture. Clear? So thank you very much.